everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Lysha and I'm the owner of Lysha Be Creative, and today we're going to be making a candy cane swirl tumbler. So I was actually inspired by a glitter by Chase Ray Glitters called Winter Mint. And although I plan on purchasing this glitter, I knew that it wouldn't arrive in time for me to be able to create this tumbler that I had in my mind. So I decided to recreate the mix with a few colors that I had on hand. So I'm using Netflix and Chill from Peachy Olive Glitters. I have Aquamarine and Snowtastic, both from my Asia Creations, and that's going to give me this really beautiful teal and red-white mix. It is almost the exact same colors that are part of the Chase Ray mix called Winter Mint that I had talked about at the beginning. And I really just love how this mix came out. So I ended up starting this tumbler on TikTok. So here's a little behind the scenes at my Monday TikTok vibes. And certainly come and feel free to hang out with me every Monday on TikTok at 9 p.m. But let's go ahead and get this 22-ounce tumbler glittered. We're going to do all over. So what I envision is that this whole cup is going to be covered with this mix I made. But then after coats of epoxy, I'm going to put painter's tape on it and make strips and then spray paint the whole cup white. Remove the painter's tape and then epoxy it with a little bit of like Diamond Magic to glitter, cheat glitter, basically the the white sections. And then, after I'm done, then put a little bit of, red washi tape along the white lines. And I just think it would look so cute. Like, in my head, it looks pretty. And then probably do a drip with this one. Oh, I'm obsessed, y'all. Obsessed. Oh my gosh. Look how pretty that is. Oh my gosh, I love it. I freaking love it. It's gonna look so cute. So after that was all glittered, I did go ahead and let that dry and then put 2 full coats of epoxy over this. I did end up doing a 3rd coat of epoxy after I do the sanding here. So I did focus and use a 60 grit sanding block and really focus on the bottom rim here. I'm not going to make you painstakingly watch me sand. I really need to figure out a better situation for sanding because I really don't like it and I dread it every time. But I'm going to sand both the top and bottom rib and anything that may be poking up on the sides. With chunky glitter, don't forget that before you go ahead and do epoxy, right after you've gotten your glitter on, you should really smush that down with some parchment paper just to make sure that you have a really good kind of result for making sure all of your glitter lays down and lays flat for your coats of epoxy. So now we're on to the taping off process. So now I'm going to be using my blue painter's tape to sort of create those strips that we're going to be spray painting white. So I'm taking my 1-inch blue painter's tape and I'm starting with just kind of the first initial swirl, which is really going to help me to get all of my lines all the way around the cup. So this initial swirl is pretty crucial to making sure that I'm going to have an even amount of space all the way around. Now you do kind of have to play with this a lot, I feel like, especially for a shorter tumbler like this true 22-ounce tumbler. If I was using a much taller, skinnier cup, I really would probably have less of a difficult time because I have more space to work with. But for these kind of tumblers that are wider at top and skinnier at the bottom, you do have to be mindful because you are going to have sort of more of a tapered look where your lines may be thicker up top and slightly tapered and thinner towards the bottom. So just something to be mindful. But now I'm going to switch you to the top-down look that I usually give for YouTube here so you can kind of see me finish off the taping process of this cup. So after I got that initial section of strip on there with the blue painter's tape, I'm going to just use one small section to kind of be my spacer and then go in with my next set of strips. So you'll notice I'm using 2 sets of painter tape strips per each section. And this is because I want what is going to be under the blue painter's tape to be that mix of glitter, and then what is currently exposed will all be spray painted white. So I knew that I wanted my white sections to be much smaller and thinner than my larger multicolored glitter sections. So I just kind of go over kind of almost over half of the first section of tape to lay down my second piece of tape in each of the sections. I ended up being able to get like a full 3-piece section around the entire cup. It kind of all depends on, again, that first initial strip of tape that you lay down. That first initial swirl tape really does determine how many of these you're going to get all the way around your cup, kind of how steep you decide to make your swirl. So I'm just going to finish taping off the rest of this here, and after I'm done taping off this last and final section here, you're then just going to see me cover up the bottom. So I have been trying my darndest to figure out how everyone does that really cute like swirl on the bottom too when they're doing their candy cane tumblers, and I still have not figured that out. So I thought I would come back to it before the end of the tutorial, but I ended up not doing anything with the bottom. I just left it that multicolored glitter. Thought about adding maybe like a couple like peppermint, shaped decals on the bottom, but I left that blank. But I just love how people can create that super cute like peppermint looking swirl, and I'm pretty sure they do it with painter's tape, but for whatever reason my mind cannot wrap around how to get that to work. So I just left that blank, but we're going to finish up the taping process of the swirls here with the second piece of painter's tape for my third and final swirl section. And then I'm going to take a bunch of small pieces of painter's tape just to tape off the bottom, because I want to make sure that that does not get any of the white spray paint on it as well. So after the bottom is all taped off, I spray painted the entire thing with a flat white spray paint. I did do 2 full coats of this just to make sure that I got full coverage all over those open sections that were under the glitter. And now we're just going to go ahead and remove all of the tape from the cup here. This part is always so satisfying for me. I love how crisp the lines look when you get to remove your painter's tape after doing your spray paint job. Oh, it's like my favorite part. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and just remove all of this blue painter's tape to really expose all of the glitter that's underneath. I'm also just going to make sure that my lines are pretty crisp for the most part. I know that I'm going to be using some washi tape and some nail tape to cover up a lot of the edges, but I do want to make sure that I didn't end up with any sections where my painter's tape may have been lifted in some sections, and maybe that some of that white spray paint may have snuck underneath here. So just take your time removing all of your painter's tape, exposing all that beautiful glitter underneath, and really just kind of making sure that you don't have anything that you need to fix at this point in time. If you have some issues where you had some overspray, or maybe you got some white spray paint into sections that you did not want, definitely just take a little bit of acetone, a Q-tip, or something small and just clean up those sections, and then you should be good to go. So we're going to put this back on the turner, and we're going to go ahead and add a coat of epoxy to this. So I've mixed up my 2-part KS resin liquidy split, and we're going to go ahead and add a little bit of Diamond Magic from my Aisha Creations here to add to the epoxy, to give my white sections a little bit of sparkle. So this is kind of like a cheat method. Instead of having to just focus on glittering those open white sections, I'm just going to add a little bit of this fine micro glitter into my epoxy, and then we're just going to add that to the tumbler. So the entire tumbler is going to get an extra little bit of sparkle and shine, and those white sections are going to look like we purposefully added the white glitter to it to make the white paint sparkle. So this is just my epoxying process. I don't always get to show this, so I thought that I would add this for this sort of tutorial because I don't always get to show this part. So this is kind of my method of doing epoxy. I always kind of put like a pretty large amount of epoxy on the cup, and then I just kind of drag my finger around the entire width of the cup, and then I use kind of more of a swiping up or swiping down motion to make sure that I get my entire cup covered in epoxy. So I know a lot of people like to do their epoxy different. This is kind of just my way of doing it. It's literally been the way I've done it since day one of using and working with epoxy, and it's never failed me yet. So it's just kind of my way to do this. So after I'm done applying all of my epoxy, I know that I've gotten it covered around my entire cup. I'm going to go ahead and grab my torch and just torch the tumbler and make sure that I don't have any bubbles, and then let that spin until cured. And of course, now we're on to being able to add some decals. So my entire tumbler is now cured. We're going to use a combination of washi tape and nail tape here to kind of really make this look like the candy cane that it was meant to be. So I'm using this red metallic washi tape that I grabbed from Hobby Lobby. It comes in a pack of a bunch of colors, and it just was the absolute perfect selection of washi tape to use. Saved me for having to cut tiny lines on my Cricut machine, and literally was just the perfect match for this cup. So I'm literally just taking that washi tape and I'm going directly in the center of each of my white sections. So I'm just being very careful as I kind of drag the washi tape down the length of each of the white sections, making sure that it is directly in the middle and that my line doesn't go on crooked in any way, shape, or form. Washi tape is really easy to pull up and replace and place back down whenever you need to. I never usually have an issue with it not sticking. But something to be mindful of when it comes to using washi tapes and nail tapes is to remember that you need to seal your washi tape or do something to get it to stick down a little bit better, if that makes sense. So for me, I use polyacrylic, but I also know that some people like to just go over it with a layer of Mod Podge, maybe spray seal it with some clear gloss spray paint. I just use polyacrylic, a really thin amount, just to cover up my washi tape and nail tape lines, just so I don't get any lifting in my final coats of epoxy. So now that I finished with the washi tape, I'm just gonna go ahead and quickly line the outsides of the white sections with this silver nail tape. I know it's super hard to tell, but it really does add a perfect finish to sort of these sections. It really just kind of ties everything in together, and I really just love how this is kind of coming out. So after I finish the entire nail tape around all of my sections of white glitter there, I then am able to move on to the next step, which is to add my final decal. So in some instances, I would normally tell you that you should put your tumbler back on the turner and then add a coat of epoxy before you add your decal. I'm cutting a couple corners here because I ran out of a little bit of time this week just with my family and I being sick all week. So I kind of just skipped a couple steps that I normally would not have with just skipping those coats of epoxy. So the reason why you would want to potentially put a coat of epoxy underneath or in between your washi tape and your decal is because sometimes with your decal you'll be able to see or feel the lines of vinyl underneath. So that decal that I just used was from Sassy Tumbler Graphics. It is listed down in the description box. So now as a final piece, before I want to add final coats, we're going to be doing a drip on this cup. So I'm using my Flynn Sisters Supply Shop epoxy. I've been using this for quite a while for my final coats, and it is absolutely amazing. If you have not already checked out her brand new epoxy, definitely be sure to go to her shop and check that out because all of her stuff is amazing. So after I've mixed up my 20 mLs of epoxy, I'm going to go ahead and add just a drop of Alumilite white epoxy dye to turn my epoxy into this white gorgeousness that we're going to be adding to the tumbler. So we're just going to let this epoxy thicken on its own. I'm not going to add any sort of thickening agent to this whatsoever. So all in all, I ended up letting it sit for about an hour or so, checking it every 20 or 30 minutes to see where it was and what consistency it was at. I'm going for a really thick, like frosting, like thickness, and that is kind of what I'm looking for to be able to start my drip. I've worked and am going to be using a couple of sprinkle mixes that I have. I have a holiday mix from Glitter Makes It, and then I have this Posh mix that I picked up a couple years ago. I don't even think it's sold anymore, but you can get some pastel-like colored faux sprinkles off of Amazon, which I'll list below. So now we're just going to go ahead and add the white epoxy to the rim of the tumbler here. And the way that I like to do that is just to use my metal stir stick to help me apply it. I like to go in pretty thick because, again, this is going to drip down a bit. And I want to make sure that I still maintain a really opaque look at the very top edge of this tumbler. So just continuing to go around the entire top rim of the cup. I did use just about all 20 ounces of the epoxy here for this strip. Typically I use anywhere from 20 to 30 mLs is what I'll mix up for my drips. I don't always use all of it, but depending on how long you let it sit sit and the thickness really just depends on how much you'll end up using. Obviously, the longer you let it sit, the thicker it gets, but really it's all about what consistency and what kind of drip look you're looking for. Because I want it to be more of like a fluffy snow looking texture and feel, I wanted it to be super thick, which is why I waited, you know, an hour and 10 minutes before I went to apply this to the top rim. So as you see, it's already starting to drip slightly, but it's a very slow drip, which is just what I want, because now we're going to go ahead and apply all of the sprinkles and the little peppermints that are part of this holiday sprinkle mix that I've put together. So I'm just using my little tweezers here to help me apply this. You could just directly kind of dump it on, but I always find then the sprinkles stick straight up, and that can be kind of a pain in the butt. So I like to hand place them with my tweezers and kind of get them all where I want them to be. So this is the final look at this cup. It will go on the turner for 2 full coats of epoxy as soon as it is dry, but this is the final look. I really hope that you did enjoy today's tutorial. If you did, give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And of course, you guys know I will see you in the next one. Bye!